In your quest to build wealth, at what point do you feel you might have enough? Keep listening as we discuss the balance between striving for more and being content with what we already have. Hello, and welcome to the Wealth Minded MD podcast with your money best friends. I'm Dr. Alicia Taylor.
And I'm Dr. Brittany Halford.
And of course, we're here to help you build wealth and make good money decisions so you can create the life you desire with more control over your time.
Alicia, can we talk about one of the most important money moves we've made as doctors? And I don't know about you, but for me, when I think about this, it's actually insurance. Yes, I know it's not sexy, but it is absolutely essential, especially disability insurance.
Facts. I got mine right after med school, before residency even started. And let me tell you, Prati Botto at PKA Insurance Group made the whole process so smooth. He actually cared, broke down everything, explained the fine print, and got me the best policy for the best price.
And what I love is that he treats everyone like that, residents, attendings, even docs on visas. He literally got you. He's super responsive, super knowledgeable. And if there's a better deal out there, he will tell you.
Oh, and if you're healthy, you could get approved for up to 10 million in life insurance. So not just disability insurance in only 5 minutes. No labs, no hassle.
So if you're serious about protecting your income and your family, call 1-800-258-1018.
Or email pradeep@pkainsurance.com.
All right, Alicia, how's life over in Atlanta? What do you have to share with the audience today?
You know, it's so funny that you asked. I was actually having a conversation with one of my friends this weekend. She called me out of the blue. And we're pretty close friends, but it's not often nowadays at our age, at our big age, that people are just calling people without warning first. So I thought, let me pick up the phone. But she was calling me to ask me about a conference that we might be going to together and like organizing, making sure we're getting there at the same time, that sort of thing. But it was interesting because during our conversation, she mentioned something to me that I was not expecting. She said, Leisha, I think I'm going to go to fellowship. And I thought, what? You know, we're attending physicians are already making a good amount of money. This is not something I was expecting. She's a family medicine physician. She works in outpatient medicine. And I said, you think you want to go to fellowship? Like, what's going on? And she said, I'm miserable at my job. And that is what prompted what proceeded to be a 40-minute impromptu conversation where she was talking to me about her job. I wanted to bring this topic up because one, it was unexpected. And two, I don't think that she is alone in feeling this way. She said, you know, I love patient care. I like seeing patients. It's the reason that she wanted to become a physician. And she especially likes being able to treat patients over time and developing a relationship with them. But she said, you know what, Leisha, it's so much. All of the administrative tasks. I come into work each day and I've got 100 new messages from patients that all want answers to quickly. I don't have enough admin time, so I've got to answer those questions in between patients, still write my notes. I'm leaving work 1 or 2 hours even after my last patient is seen. I still got to send out lab results. It's almost like the work never stops. And not only does it never stop, even if you happen to clear your in basket, which is a big feat, it refills almost constantly. She said, you know, we've got pressures to see over 20 patients in a day. They're scheduled for oftentimes 15-minute visits, but they come with more complaints that take more time. So I'm constantly running behind. When I'm running behind, the patients are upset that they've been waiting. And it's just this cycle that never ends. And she said, you know, I don't think I could do this for the rest of my life. And this is somebody who really was excited to start her career as an attending physician and hasn't been an attending for that long. And so she was talking to me about going to fellowship because she said, you know, I think it'll be easier if I just focus on one problem instead of being a primary care physician that is responsible for everybody's problem and all of these problems. As I was talking to her, I said, you know, I'm not opposed to you going to fellowship if that's what your heart desires, but I want to let you know that I think sometimes specialists feel the same way. Maybe they're not primary care physicians, but they may also be feeling burnt out. They may also feel the pressure to see a certain amount of patients in a day and feel that they don't have enough time to spend with their patients as well. And so I thought, if you want to go to fellowship, then that's fine. But what about working a little bit less? You know, I talked to so many people who were full-time, which as a physician, full-time is actually like 60 to 80 hours a week because you might be spending, 40 hours seeing patients directly, but all of the extra admin tasks and the messages and the lab results and the note writing, all of that adds up. And so we add up all that time. It's really like you're working 50, 60 plus hours a week. So a lot of physicians find that if they were able to cut back some. Maybe instead of working a full FTE where they're seeing patients 5 days a week, a morning and an afternoon session, maybe they cut down to only seeing patients 4 days a week or 3.5 days a week. They often find that they're a lot happier. And for her, she said, well, that sounds nice, but what about the money? I've gotten used to getting paid a certain amount. If I cut down, then all of a sudden I'm getting paid less. And I've got student
Mhm.
loans and I've got these other financial obligations. And so it's almost like she's feeling trapped. I
Mhm.
mentioned this again because I don't think she's the only one. And I just thought it was a good thing to kind of bring up. I wondered, Brittany, if you have felt the same way, if this has kind of led you to really think about how many hours you're spending working, and if you've ever considered transitioning into another field or into another job entirely.
Yes, I definitely have. I've been doing this thing for almost a decade now, Alicia. That is quite crazy. I just can't even wrap my mind around it. There are periods of time where I question, should I do something differently? I thought about doing a transfusion medicine fellowship. In fact, I was probably going to do one. If I hadn't gotten pregnant with KJ, then I probably would have done a transfusion medicine fellowship. I've thought about doing a palliative care fellowship. I'm good with those end of life discussions. I've also thought about transitioning into primary care because I'm bringing work home. When I am on service, I am exhausted. You're like, can we record? No, we cannot because I'm on service. I cannot. There's no wiggle room, when I am in the hospital because things are unpredictable. As you have highlighted, ever field you go into, whatever you do, then there are going to be highs and lows. There are going to be stressors. There are going to be additional demands that will require your attention. And so it's not about necessarily changing all the time. I think sometimes change can be good as far as changing fields. If you're in a toxic environment, then by all means change. You don't want to stay at a job that is toxic, but also about asking for what you need and negotiating that in. And so when I heard you say your friend's like, I'm used to a certain salary now. I can't cut back if I cutting back the money. Then maybe you can do both. And so it's really important that we think about how do we articulate our value to the powers that be so that we can still create the life that we desire, so that we can protect our greatest asset, which is our ability to generate income right now. And I just wonder how your friend feels about negotiating and what other things does she need? Yes, money is one of those things, but we've talked about in previous podcasts that money ain't everything. We've been talking about the various types of wealth. Financial wealth is one, but what about everything else? What about the time freedom? What about the mental health? And it seems like those are some of the aspects of wealth that are coming into play here that are more burdensome for her.
As we talked about cutting down, she wondered about the money and the decrease in pay that might ensue. But also, I remember her saying, I don't even know if that's possible. Like, I don't even know if my employer will allow me to. As I was doing a little coaching and saying, well, you never know until you ask. And it doesn't hurt to at least get a meeting and bring it up because maybe you can't cut back right now, but maybe you could in 4 months or 6 months or whatever. And maybe it's not you cut down from a full FTE, a full clinical load to 3.5 days a week. Maybe you go down to 9 sessions and then 8 sessions and then kind of see how that is. One of the things I also talked to her about, not only in regards to talking with her boss and trying to negotiate something that might be a little bit better for her and allow her to continue to work in her career, but we also talked about other jobs outside of medicine that she could
Mhm.
use to maybe supplement her income or even over time transition into. And I talked about how patient care is one thing, but there's also other kinds of jobs. There's lots of industries that could use a physician on staff as a consult or to help with maybe some of their products that they're developing or their business needs. And so just really thinking outside of the box about different ways that you could leverage this skill set that you have of medicine and still earn a decent living, but do so in a way that feels good to you. Do so in a way that gives you the time and the mental health that you need. Because I think for a lot of physicians, working 60 plus hours a week in patient care may not be sustainable. So just thinking about some other options.
So you just gave your friend basically the preliminary of what we've been working on with our coaching. And so if you are listening to this, you're like, oh, Alicia and Brittany, they are my money best friends, but I want their knowledge, their expertise a little bit more. I want their specific advice on my specific situation. Then we want to invite you to our masterclass, which is occurring October 14th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Negotiate Like a Boss Masterclass. This is absolutely free, and we will teach you how you can ask for what you want and actually get it. Leisha, I'm so excited about this opportunity. The last time there were so many people in the building asking questions, you dropping gems. From there, we had an opportunity to coach many of them to get raises and schedule changes, etc. So I am excited, and we want to see your beautiful faces in the virtual room on October 14th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yep, that's right. So we'll put the link in the show notes so you can sign up and register. It's completely free. We just need to know how many people are going to attend. And as Brittany mentioned, we cannot wait to see you there.
As physicians, one of the most important things that we can do is make sure that we secure our income, because a lot of our financial plans are contingent on our high doctor income. One of the things that you will need to do is make sure that you get long-term disability insurance.
Now, Pradeep and his team at PKA Insurance Group have a reputation for putting people over profits and always doing what's best. Do not hesitate to email PKA Insurance and his team today.
They will help you get the insurance you need with the service you deserve.
All right, Brittany. So I think this lends itself really well to our next topic, which is our financial focus of the day, as we kind of close out this 5-part series on the different types of wealth. And we would be remiss as your money best friends not to talk about money or financial wealth, right? We had talked about the other kinds of wealth, which was time wealth and mental wealth and social wealth and physical wealth. And now we get to talk about the money. Now we're talking about financial wealth. And I have an opening question for you, Brittany. What does wealth mean to you? What do you define as wealth?
It is the ability to choose, like having enough money. We talked about the various types of wealth, but in this case, if we're talking about truly just money, having enough so that I can make the choice that I desire, not the choice that is being dictated to me, not the choice that someone else desires for me, being able to choose. And that to me is the greatest freedom. It's like, yeah, I could choose this hamburger, or I could choose to go and pay $100 steak plus, and it's not going to make too much of a difference in my bank account because I have more than enough. So when I think about wealth in general, it's just like having those options. What about you? How would you define wealth?
That's a good question. Before I answer it, I have a follow-up. If you'll use that as your definition, right, the ability to choose, would you say that you're wealthy?
Definitely.
Okay, we're trying to be where you are. Okay, you said that
without hesitation.
Okay. Me next, God. Me next. So if we're talking from a financial standpoint, I have a firm belief that money gives you options. And so it's similar to your definition of having the option to live the life that I envisioned, live life on my own terms. If I had to put a financial part on it, a dollar amount on that, it would be my financial independence number, right? And what amount of money would I have enough where work is now optional? And let me just state, I'm not there yet. So whatever my financial independence number is, for me, financial independence is, like I said, work is optional, which means I would have enough money to be able to sustain my current lifestyle indefinitely. The last time I did this calculation, depending on how old I am at the time, I think it would be somewhere between like $3 to $4 million right now, based on today's dollars and today's prices. And so once the assets get to that amount, I'm like, y'all may not be seeing me at the clinic, but I told my boss, good for her. I'm not there yet. In fact, I'm still asking her for raises. So got a little ways to go. But that's how I define wealth. The reason, Brittany, why I asked you this is because one of the things that they talk about in the book, the 5 types of wealth as we get on this last part, is about defining what that means to you. Because if you don't know what wealth means to you, how will you know when you get there? One of the things that they talk about when it comes to money is that money is such a funny thing in that if you don't define how much you actually want, what happens is once you reach a goal, you'll extend the goalpost and you'll say, oh, I'll be happy if, or I'll be happy when. I remember as a resident, maybe you're making $50,000, $60,000 a year and you're thinking, I'll be happy if I could make 6 figures. Like that just seems like such a big goal. And then you start making 6 figures and you go, actually, I'll be happy if I could make whatever amount is next. And then you start making that amount as an attending and it feels good initially, but then you start to kind of get used to it and you go, oh, I really want to raise, right? I want 10% more or 20% more. And so the goalpost just keeps moving. The goalpost keeps moving. Then at what point will you feel like you made it? At what point will you feel like you have enough? What this book talks about, or one of the things that they mention, it isn't what you have that constitutes wealth. It's whether or not you're satisfied with what you have. And so then it brings on this concept of enough. People who are wealthy feel like they have enough, or people who are, I guess, satisfied with their wealth, people who have more of peak happiness, they've defined what enough is for them. And once they've reached it, they sort of start to focus on these other types of wealth. Because the temptation is, if you don't know your money number, if you don't know at what number you feel like you will have enough, you'll constantly try to achieve more. For a lot of people, they try to achieve more money at the expense of the other four types of wealth, at the expense of time, at the expense of mental health, at the expense of social wealth. And what that might look like practically is, if you haven't defined the amount of salary or the amount of money that you need to make in which you would have enough, then you keep constantly working more to get more. And maybe you sacrifice time with your kids or time with your family. Maybe you sacrifice your social wealth. So now you're not as involved in community events, or you don't spend as much time with your family or your friends. Maybe you sacrifice your mental health and you're not functioning at your peak power like you used to. Maybe you sacrifice your physical wealth and now you're no longer going to the gym as often. You got to define what enough is so that you know when to start really focusing on some of those other types of wealth. And so it really begs the question of, well, what is enough? What point, what salary, what level of assets would you feel like you have enough?
Yeah, I think that enough question is very challenging for many people because, as you mentioned, we get on this hedonic treadmill. And even though we might arrive, we get a raise, and then we basically reset our happiness or satisfaction or what have you, might reset, even though we accomplished that goal. Then it's like, okay, that thing is done. Now on to the next one. And especially as people who are extremely ambitious, I can understand how we kind of just get on this hamster wheel to accumulate these goals, and it's like, oh, I did that. Let's do the next thing. And I'm guilty of this too. And it's not necessarily just financially motivated. There are other tasks and goals that I want to achieve in my life. And that is what motivates me. But even in those pursuits, even in not having my 4 million invested, I still feel extremely wealthy. I still feel that I have the option when they're sending out requests for moonlighting for me to say, no, actually, I have something else to do. And that something else is sitting on my couch and doing that thing. And that is perfectly fine. So I really just want to empower us to define what enough is, even as we are still achieving the next goal. Learning how to express gratitude and be satisfied with where we are, even while we're striving for more. This is something that I've learned to do mostly because of my religion. The works and the things, the gifts that I have are not mine at all. They have been bestowed upon me and trusted to me. And so, because I have been given these gifts, I have to give them back to the world. Because I have been given these gifts, I need to express a level of gratitude for the gift. And just knowing that, like, really ain't none of this mine. So I should just be happy with all of it.
It's so interesting. I was scrolling on social media and I saw this post, I think it was on Threads, of this woman who, ironically enough, was defining what enough was for her. She literally had like a 10-part series where she was breaking down what her ideal life was and broke it down to the cent. Like, she had a slide on like housing, and she was like, my goal is to live in this, 4-bedroom house that in my area is going to cost, I don't know, $500,000. Interest rates right now are 6.4%. If I got a 30-year mortgage, this is how much I pay for my mortgage, property taxes in my area. So total housing cost is like $6,000. And so she put that per month. And then she had the next slide. She was like, okay, transportation. I'm the kind of gal, I don't want to drive just any old car. I would prefer to drive a car that's nice. And she put, her dream car there. I think it was like an Audi or something. And she was like, right now, the Audis that cost this much. And if I got this term and paid it off at this amount of time, this is how much I would pay per month. This is how much car insurance is. This is how much I'm spending on my vehicle. Next slide. Grooming. She was like, I'm the kind of person, I want to get my hair done, my nails done. This is how much it costs for a full set to the T. She said, I want a personal trainer. I want to hire a chef. I want all of these things. She had her savings slide, her investment slide. And I think at the end, she discovered, if I add all this up per month, I need to bring home, I can't remember what the number added up to. Maybe it was like $30,000 or $40,000 a month, right? Which is like a large number. Maybe it wasn't that high. Maybe it was like $20,000. I can't remember. But she was like, all right, 20,000 times 12, that leads me to what? $240,000 a year. Now this is all post-tax. So what's the pre-tax amount? Okay, that means I need to bring home $315,000. And she had just broken it down so specific. But it was so inspiring because she was like, okay, How am I going to get here? What professions make this amount of money? Because she was like looking and she saw a doctor and, some lawyers or whatever. And she was like, well, everybody got time for school for that long. What's another way that I can get here? And she said, entrepreneurship. Good. I'm going to start a business. I think she already had one, but it was like, all right, I need to sell this amount of product. I need to sell this amount of stuff. But it was something about the level of clarity and the fact that she had
Mhm.
defined what enough was for her. And the book kind of talks about that is to actually take the time to define it that specifically. What does enough mean for you? Where do you want to live? How much does that house cost? What do you want to have? What do you want to drive? How often do you want to go on vacation? Do you care about grooming and, maintenance and that sort of thing? How much are you going to spend on insurances? How much are you going to give away? How much are you going to invest? And really just figuring out what your enough is to live a lifestyle that you would be happy with. The book talks about like doing it for yourself. And if you're partnered, having your partner do it for him or herself as well. And then you guys can compare what your enough is and you figure out, okay, what is the total amount of money that we as a couple, or if you're not married, you as a single person need to bring home in order to live that lifestyle. And again, the goal is not necessarily for you to live super frugally or for you to live super lavishly. It's putting it down on paper so that you know what enough is, so you know when you hit it. And then you can maybe start cutting back at work. Maybe you can start focusing on other things and you don't have to focus so much on generating so much income.
It's really interesting to hear the amount of clarity and the fact that you watched all of the slides or read all the slides on TikTok. Clearly, that was a good post in marketing there. But clarity brings a level of comfort. Clarity also brings a level of consistency, And so I think this exercise is great for all of us because even as we are pursuing this number of enough, we can find comfort because, oh, this is part of the plan. Remember this pain that I'm feeling in my leg? This is helping me to build a muscle. And so we can acknowledge the pain points and not only see them as sore spots, but see them as progress. For me, I feel like I'm living in my enough. My car is 20 years old, but I don't care about driving. I walk mostly everywhere. So that's fine for me. I get my nails done when I want to, if I want to, get my hair done. I'm able to travel, create memorable experiences with my family to give some money away. Like I am currently living in my enough. Now, this also requires that I work and my husband goes to work. So we're not financially independent, but I feel that we're financially wealthy because we have enough money that if there is a stressor, car breaks down, hot water heater, etc., that stress is not perpetuated. And then we don't even have to worry about it. Okay, this is what it is. Let me call a few people. Let's get this thing handled. We have enough social wealth that we can go out to dinner and continue to have those meaningful relationships with our friends, go to church and give our tithes without feeling the burden of that. We have the physical wealth. We're able to buy some new running shoes or get a treadmill or whatever. Like we have all of the things. We have enough of the money to support us in the other aspects of wealth that we've talked about. And so even if you want more, even if you might want to retire early, there is a way for us to identify that what we have right now could still be sufficient. And when I think about how blessed we are, like I have more than I don't know what percentage of Americans, but majority probably of Americans. And I am grateful that we've been blessed. But even if I had a little bit less, I think that I could still feel comfortable and at peace.
Similarly, there are still some things that I want. Like I would love to be able to take vacations a little bit more lavishly, although some people might hear this podcast and
Girl,
think I already
really?
do that.
Do you want to take them more lavishly?
Girl, I love a good vacation, okay? So just doing that without sacrificing other things. To your point, I probably do go on a decent amount of vacations and trips, but I don't yet do some of those other things that I'd like to spend some more money on, like being able to hire a maid. That's important to me. Being able to maybe hire a personal trainer. I'm strongly considering that, or a personal chef. Some of those, like definitely luxuries. But this reminds me of this story of the fisherman and the businessman. And the story goes that there is a fisherman. Each morning he will like catch fish. He's really good at catching fish. So he can do this pretty quickly. And then once he finishes catching the fish, he'll like go to his home and wash up and play with his kids and see his wife. And then he'll go into the town and get a glass of wine and laugh and drink with his friends. And there was a businessman who came into town and sort of observed this, right? He saw that the fisherman was really good at catching fish. And he also saw that the fisherman didn't spend that much time doing it, that he would stop after maybe an hour or so and kind of do whatever he wanted for the rest of his day. And the businessman basically strikes up a conversation with the fisherman and says, hey, you're really good at catching fish. You know that if you caught more fish or spent more time catching fish, that you'd have more fish. And then if you have more fish, then you could then sell the fish for a profit. If you continue to sell the fish for a profit, then you could buy more boats. And if you were able to buy more boats, then you would be able to catch even more fish and then sell even more fish for an even larger profit. And at some point, you could even establish a franchise and you could hire other people to drive these boats and catch these fish. And then you could sell it for an even larger profit and you could make millions and millions of dollars, right? And the fisherman goes, okay, so what would I do after that? Businessman goes, what do you mean? And the fisherman's basically like, okay, well, if I have millions of dollars, what would I do then? And the businessman goes, well, you can retire to an old town and you can, I guess, spend less time catching fish and then spend more time with your family and then spend time with your friends in the city drinking and laughing. And so the moral of the story was like the businessman only saw how you can make more money, but the fisherman was basically saying like, I'm already living my ideal life. Why am I trying to
Mhm.
make all of this money just so that I can then cut back and live the life that I'm living now? And that story
Mhm.
resonated with me because I think a lot of us who are really ambitious career wise, we think the same way. If I work more, I can make more money and then I can invest more money and then I can make millions of dollars and then I can retire early. And it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do when you retire early? I would maybe work only 1 day a week in medicine and then I would spend more time with my family. And it's like, okay, well, why don't you just do that now? Your response brought up this story of the businessman and the fisherman for me. And I was thinking, I have to check myself sometimes and say, am I thinking like the businessman right now? And not
Mm.
realizing that I could create a life like the fisherman, even right now in the present.
It really reflects how we could be chasing the wrong thing for the same outcome and how we don't know what the future brings, but we know what we have right now. And I often forget the present moment. That word present also means that it's a gift, right? So, how can we make the most of the gifts that we've been given? I too would like to go on a few more luxurious trips. To hear you say that is like, Sure. So you traveling all over the world. And you told me in one of our DM messages that you're going to the Maldives and you're planning on. And it's just like, yes, you could travel more, but you travel a significant amount. Luxury, using points, other people's money. And how can we also just stand in the presence of that and in the awe and the beauty of that? Go through your phone and look at all the pictures that you've taken and just really relish in that moment. Because as I remind my daughter often when she complains about stuff, these are things that many people only dream about. And we are living our ancestors' dreams. We are living our grandparents. I mean, my grandparents' dreams. Maybe this is me being Brittany. Sometimes I can be a little sage on the mic, but I am very grateful for where we are. And I feel like I already have enough. Now, I cannot quit my job
Yeah.
yet, but I'm also grateful for my job, to be able to meet patients at the bedside and to take care of them and their families and to help them heal and share bits and parts of my life. I share pictures of my kids all the time. Let me see pictures of your kids or your grandkids, your dogs. It is a true privilege to be able to help and serve others. So I'm just feeling all warm and fuzzy over here thinking about that God has blessed me so much. And I hope that our listeners are reflecting on that and feeling the same.
Yeah. I mean, as we kind of alluded to in the teaser of this episode, it's like, what is the balance between striving for more and being content with what you have? And that balance is recognizing when you have enough and really defining what enough means to you, just similar to, as I mentioned, the person on social media who was really defining to the cent what enough meant for her. But for some people, as they think about what their definition of enough is, they're like, girl, I'm not there. I don't have enough. I can tell you that. For those folks, when it comes to financial wealth, there are three pillars as there is for each of the types of wealth. And so the first pillar of financial wealth is income generation, right? You got to make some money. And what they define that as creating stable, growing income through, primary employment, maybe some secondary employment and some passive income streams. And so to me, that means your main job, some side gigs, and some investments. And the thought process is you can only cut your expenses so much, but you can always increase your income. And so you got to figure out ways that you can generate income. And maybe that is through your main job. Maybe you're blessed to be in a position where your main job pays you a good amount. But for other folks who need to supplement their income for various reasons, maybe you've got more financial priorities, you've got more expenses and things like that. It's thinking about, okay, how can you generate income? Yes, primary employment is one thing. And we'll, during our maths class, we're going to talk about negotiating. And so that we can help you earn more at your main job. But you may also consider side gigs. A lot of physicians are starting side gigs now. And also, you want to make sure that you're investing money so that your money is growing and compounding and you're continuing to increase your net worth that way as well.
I'm happy that you brought up the pillars, because this is something that we often have to just understand that the reason why I can't retire now is because I don't have enough saved. I don't have enough passive sources to replace my active income. And while we are thinking about income generation, this is something that I often consider is what am I sacrificing for the additional income, but also the other pieces of the equation that I think you're going to highlight here, which is expenses. So you said you can only cut your expenses so much. I wholeheartedly agree with that. But it's like, how do I manage both of those factors to increase the gap between them so that I can have more money to invest and build up that passive source of income. So creating income, but using other people's time, energy, money, etc., in order to generate some income for myself.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, income generation is one part, but then you also have to manage your expenses. And that is an area where I think a lot of physicians may struggle because as physicians, a lot of us get paid a decent amount. Now we could always use and will gladly accept, more money. But compared to the average American, physicians earn a decent income. A lot of physicians may not have an income problem. They may have an expense problem. I guess another way to say this is they're spending more than they make. And so there's not, as you mentioned, Brittany, not enough of a gap in between what they make and what they spend. And some of the, tips to kind of prevent this is to ensure that your expenses are growing slowly, not fast over time. Everyone's expenses are going to grow over time because of inflation, right? Things get more expensive over time. And so for the most part, it's not uncommon for someone in their 30s to spend one amount. And then when you hit your 40s, maybe you're spending a lot more. And a large portion of that is a lot of people tend to have children or care for others. And so you have children, your expenses go up, whether it's daycare, childcare, after school care, extracurriculars, college savings, whatever it is, your expenses tend to go up. But the key is controlling that, right? And ensuring that your expenses grow slowly and not fast over time. And for a lot of folks, one way to do that is to avoid lifestyle creep. There's a phrase that says the greatest risk to your financial independence journey and you being able to retire on time is expectation inflation. In other words, deciding to increase your lifestyle and improve your lifestyle to the point where you're no longer able to save as much as you need to. And so, the second pillar is really about managing your expenses.
I cannot emphasize this enough. I see so many physicians as you do, Leisha, who are like, oh, I need this. Oh, I need this. Oh, I need this. That there are so many external pressures that are placed upon us to live like a doctor. I tell them people, when they talk about my 20-year-old vehicle, are you going to give a contribution to the down payment, et cetera? And I can say that we have elevated our lifestyle since we've increased our income. We have purchased a new home recently to accommodate our family. And my husband and I still dream sometimes about, okay, maybe this is not our forever home. This is our now home. We're going to stay in here for X amount of years and then we're going to purchase a different home. And that different home is going to be at this price point or going to have these characteristics that we desire. So even though I'm living in my enough, and I'm very grateful that for the home that we have, I still dream sometimes. And with those dreams, it's a higher price tag. With the income generation and the managing expenses, it's all about the appropriate timing as well. That you can't do everything all at once. You want to make sure that the numbers work and that there's still a gap, there's still opportunity. Because if you think that you're going to just spend all of your money, then you'll never get to retire. So you have to create more gaps so that you just don't have enough to save in an emergency fund, but you have the cash flow to also invest. And it's when your money is making money for you, when you're really capitalizing on that portion, that's when you're going to achieve the financial freedom that you actually desire. Because we say like your money can work harder for you than you can for it. I know that it sounds very cliche, but it actually is true. And when you also think about the taxes, when I go to the hospital and I earn $1, I am giving the government 35 cents on every dollar that I earn. But if I pull out from our investments that are in the stock market, our capital gains rate is about 20%. I'm giving 20 cents for every dollar that my dollar makes, or I'm giving 35 cents for every dollar that I make by spending my time, my energy, my intellect to earn. when I think about, okay, how can I do this more effectively? I think about both sides of the equations. Let me minimize my expenses and generate a little bit more income at the same time so that I can accelerate that point in which I can be financially independent.
One of the things that you highlighted, which I want to make sure that we emphasize and don't gloss over, is that different types of income are taxed differently. As you mentioned, when you have that active income, so you going to work every day, you're taxed, you said at 35%, versus when you invest that money and you make money, you're only taxed 20%. So you pay less in taxes when you make more money from your investments. And so what does that mean? We should try to make some more money from our investments, right? Work smarter, not harder. And that's the third pillar is making some money, building your net worth through long-term investments. And how do you do that? You invest the difference between what you make and what you spend, and you let it compound or continue to grow over time. Read quite a few financial books, and some of them occasionally will mention the story of Warren Buffett. Obviously, he's one of the richest men alive, but that he didn't amass a good portion of his wealth until he was well over like 50 or 60 years old. Now, granted, he had a lot of money even in his 30s. But the reason why he was able to amass such a large amount of wealth is because he started investing so early and he kept it investing over such a long period of time. I mean, if you took how much you were investing each month or each year and you extrapolated that out over 40, 50, 60 years, you would have a large number as well. It's the fact that time matters for a lot of folks. They say, oh, I'll do that later, contribute the maximum to my work retirement account later. Right now, I want to do this. Right now, I want to spend my money doing X, Y, and Z thing. And I would just caution you against, hey, I understand that you've got other priorities, but also understand that the earlier you invest, the more it's going to compound and the more it's going to grow over time. And you can't keep putting it off. And so the lesson here is start early and invest often. And so when we think about income generation, it's about, all right, maybe I should negotiate more so I can earn more. And then maybe I should consider starting a side gig, leveraging my skill set, things that I'm good at in order to be able to make and generate more money. When it comes to expense management, it's about, all right, let me make sure that I negotiate some of these bills down, whether it's my Wi Fi or my car insurance, negotiating down some of these bills, budgeting for your expenses. If you're somebody like me who loves to travel, create a travel budget so that you're not spending way more than maybe you ought on your next trip. Maybe it's starting with treating your credit cards like cash, meaning paying down the balance in full each month. So some of those things I think will help to manage expenses. And then as we talked about, making more money from your investments, one, because it'll help your money grow over time, but two, because you're taxed less when you make money from investments, is making sure that you are putting a set amount of money aside each month or each paycheck, whether it's automated savings or savings through your work retirement accounts, but just making sure that you prioritize that the money is actually being invested, right? You selected your investments, that you're allowing that stuff to grow over time. I think those are the three pillars that will allow you to really generate wealth and get a lot closer to whatever your definition of enough might be.
Well, Alicia, since we're talking about finances and enough, how much money have you been spending on fun? And do you feel like you have enough fun money?
Girl, I can never have enough fun money. That's the problem. I am like, oh no, we can always have more fun. So it's funny that you asked. I am going on a few trips. How ironic. And one of the things I like to do is buy new books. Because oftentimes in my trips, I try to build in a little bit of downtime, whether it's travel or me kind of like relaxing a little bit in the start of each day. And so I've actually been looking at new books that I might want to purchase for this trip. And usually I'll purchase some sort of finance related book, but then I am pretty nosy at baseline. So I like to buy books that are memoirs and based on people's lives, just because I'm always curious about how people got to where they are. And so I am going to look on Amazon or on different bookstore websites and look at, which artists that I admire might have new memoirs out. So I could purchase one or two of their books. And then I might look into purchasing some more financial books. So maybe it doesn't sound fun to other folks, but I love to read and I want to get some new books for this new trip that I'm taking. So that's how I am planning to spend my money on fun.
Yay. You'll have to let us know which books you purchase and what you think of them. Unlike you, I am not spending my money on books. I still have one book remaining to read for this year to reach my goal of 4 books. I don't know how many books you've read, but my goal was 4. But I'm interested in learning what new books I should purchase for next year. All right. So instead, I am purchasing sweatpants.
Like, really, Brittany?
I love a good cozy pair of sweatpants that I can throw on super quickly if I want to go to the grocery store to drop the kids off or to go for a run. So I found some and I'm excited to put them on as the weather is starting to get a little bit colder. I'm just thinking about, oh, I'm going to be so cozy and comfortable in my sweatpants. I'm looking for another pair. I found this one that has like a zipper in the back that I really actually like, but I haven't found any other ones with that zipper pocket. So I'm going to stay on the lookout for that one.
All right. If you see a comfortable sweatpants brand or whatever that you absolutely love, please send me that info. I love a good sweatpant too. I like to read in my sweatpants and just be super comfy. So that'll kind of fit with the whole aesthetic of the trip. So let me know what you find.
Will do. Will do.
Alrighty. Well, hopefully you enjoyed that episode from us today. And just a reminder, we will be having that negotiation masterclass. It's completely free. Click the link in our show notes to register. Again, that will take place on October 14th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So don't forget to register. We will see you again next week.
Hello, and thank you for listening to our podcast. And because of that, we have something for you, our Wealthy Minds Blueprint.
Have you ever thought to yourself, I wish I could be better with money? Do you want to start investing and saving for retirement, but keep delaying because you don't know where to start? Our Wealthy Minds Blueprint is here to help.
This guide will teach you what you didn't learn in your training so you can stop being confused about money and start taking what we call wealthy-minded action.
We'll help you become a master of your finances and simplify investing so you can get started today. Take control of your financial future by downloading your free copy of the Wealthy Minds Blueprint now and start building the wealth you deserve.
One of the most important things you can do is ensure you have long-term disability insurance. Long-term disability insurance secures your income if the unexpected happens and you are unable to work due to medical illness, chronic conditions, or an accident.
Unfortunately, all insurance agents aren't created equal. Some of them are so focused on making a sale that they fail to reveal certain necessary information, tell you about discounts available, or clearly explain the process. Prati Botto and his team at PKA Insurance Group are different. They have a reputation of putting people over profits and always doing what's best.
If you need life insurance or disability insurance, reach out to Pradeep and his team today. They will help you get the insurance you need with the service you deserve.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Brooke. I'm recording a little disclaimer for my mommy, Dr. Brittany Halford, and her friend, Dr. Lisa Taylor. Just so you know, they're not financial advisors, tax professionals, lawyers, or financial planners. Everything you hear is for education and entertainment. It's not strict financial advice, you know. So use your best judgment, chat with a tax professional, and all those other people that you need to talk to. Thanks for tuning in today. Keep cruising on your journey to wealth and wellness. Bye-bye.